Then there's no. Can I ask one bit of thing?
Sorry, I didn't start recording at the beginning.
Doesn't matter. So the point is, if there's nothing to be hurt or damaged, then the self, you see, has no boundaries. It's only the ego that needs that. Only the ego that needs that. Now, better you have healthy boundaries than you're a terrible codependent with no boundaries at all. But there's a place beyond. And if any of you have tried to set healthy boundaries, have you been able to get other people to respect them?
Sometimes.
And how did that work out?
I think it works with small things.
Well, I mean, you can negotiate things in relationship. But in the end, if my happiness is dependent on someone else's behavior, it's a losing proposition, according to yoga. Because guess what? We can't control other people. All I can do is tell them that I'm upset. They might do something with that, they might not. But yoga, I've never seen any scripture that talks about rights, that talks about boundaries, that talks about needs. A lot of them talk about our duty. It's very interesting. Different kind of view. Also, did we talk about it in this class, being able to discern the difference between Shreyas and Preyas? Those are the language that's used in Kathopanishad. What I call the good Shreyas, the deep intuition, and Preyas, Priya, what I find dear, meaning my tyrannical inner 2-year-old. I want ice cream. Eat your vegetables. No. You know that place inside?
Yeah, we talked about it. We talked about it, yeah.
I'm maybe not in Gita. I think we did in another class. Did we talk about it in this class?
You might have. You call it the delectable and the electable.
Yeah. That's again from Kathopanishad. But many of us confuse the two. We set up the world to try to get all our needs met, to set these boundaries. We try to arrange it so I'm in control. It's a failing proposition. It's a failing proposition. Yoga says, be empty. Let everything pass through. Take nothing personally. Only becomes problematic when I take it personally. Shreyas is the good. That's where that deep intuition comes. Now, in the end, anyway, when I'm going to that's a whole other subject. So anyway, all of our suffering happens in rajas. That's where ambition, greed, desire, competition, and its inevitable fruits. We have a KKK in yoga. It's not the Ku Klux Klan. Kama, karma, krodha. Kama, craving, want. that impels me to self-centered action. Work. Inevitable result. Krodha. Anger. Have I shared with you the yogic definition of anger?
I don't know.
Thwarted desire, unmet expectation. Look to your experience. I didn't get what I want. Now I'm pissed off about it. So this effort to try to be happy through control, domination, edges to your ego. It's doing you failure. The failure. Yoga says, let it all pass through. So, what is sattva? Sattva is when the mind is pure. That doesn't mean good thoughts as opposed to bad thoughts. It means fewer thoughts. Being empty. Oh.
What is the longest period of emptiness you have experienced without being on drugs or altered states? Or
My experience and what I were to say about it will not help you at all. Because you would have no way of knowing whether or not I'm blowing smoke. Swami used to say, the longer the beard, the more your distrust should be. So there's no value in asking me about this one's subjective experience. But what I'm telling you is scriptural. So believe the scriptures. That should be your authority. The Jivan Mukta, the person who is liberated, is effortlessly empty all the time. Nothing left inside. Zero. All right. What's our, yes?
could I ask two quick questions?
Certainly.
I don't know if they're quick actually, but on the boundaries thing, I want to ask a clarification on that one. My understanding is it depends on how you approach the boundaries. So for example, let's say there's students who want to spend all their time with you, but you obviously set boundaries if you set boundaries from a point of equanimity, like you have a preference to not spend 8 hours a day with the students who wants to spend 8 hours a day with you. That to me is different from the student annoys you and you're unhappy that the student is pestering. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's also like the mind state that you approach something at, because in life you have to set some sort of boundaries. But
We all make choices, sweetheart, sure.
right, but it's not from a point of agitation, is my understanding.
But you never know what's going to happen. Let me give you a clear example.
Right.
So Swamiji he was very, very strict. So when we would do a camp, meditation would start at 6:30. And if you were not there at 6:30, the door was locked.
Mhm.
Oh, but I ran into traffic, didn't count. And I remember one camp, I can't remember, it was up north, it might have been Humboldt. And the maintenance staff was supposed to open the classroom where we were supposed to have meditation at 6:15 or something like that. They didn't do it. Swamiji gets there, we're all waiting outside. He sits right down on the sidewalk and starts to lead the guided meditation. So he had a preference.
Right.
That door should be unlocked. I want to be inside to have meditation. Immediately let go.
Yeah, so he's not agitated. He just has a preference for certain things to be a certain way. Yeah.
We will always have our preferences.
Right.
But when there's an insistence,
Like, I'm not going to be happy unless.
I have to have it this way.
Right.
And especially if we get into power struggles in life. That's a sure sign your ego's involved. Good question. Any others? In the scripture.
Oh, sorry. My second question. Sorry, Jim. The second question was to stay in the observing witness mode. Is the best practice to just observe every single thought that crosses your mind and just recognize that it's not you, so you don't stay identified with it? Like at all times, just recognize that whatever comes in our mind is just a thought and it's gonna rise and fall.
I'm going to tell you a secret.
Okay.
Actually, you don't become the witness.
You already are the witness.
You already are the
But
witness.
to
Most of us are just unconscious of that fact.
But to become conscious of it, should be, or like, is the practice to just always be aware of every thought that crosses, every thought that is of what the mind is composed of.
Play with it. You will find your own answer. But Sakshi Baba is a practice to take on all your waking hours so that you are clear under all circumstances. I am not my feelings. I am not my thoughts. I am not any personal sense of self. Just that space of consciousness. Watch it, watch it, watch it. Do our best not to be compelled into speech or action that's compulsory. Most of us think if I have a very strong feeling, I have to act or speak about it. But you want to be able to be detached enough. Yes, it's there. But with the compulsion, that's the rajas. I have a student who's had obsessive defiance disorder, I think is what he was diagnosed with. And he was convinced that if somebody insulted him, he had to insult them back. I can't stop it, I have to. It was a revelation once he started to meditate, to realize that actually he had some choice in the matter. Sometimes we can only practice Sakshi Baba when we're very still, like we're on a walk or stuff like that. Now, uncontrolled speech is oftentimes what can draw us out. Keeps you from being quiet enough to really. All right, let's get into scripture. Going on. What verse are we on?
You're in 31 of chapter 13. We have until 35 to go.
Okay.
Yada prithak bhava mekasthamanupashyati tata eva cha vistaram brahma sampadhyate tada. When he sees the whole variety of beings as resting in the one and spreading forth from that one alone, he then becomes Brahman.
So the language of Sanskrit uses this, you become Brahman. That's not actually what happens. The moksha is not termed self-becoming, Brahman becoming. We use the term in English, self-realization. You realize what you've always been. It's much like this. Have you seen where I put my glasses? I looked all over the house. Where are my glasses? Oh, I'm suffering so terribly. I can't see a thing. I've lost my glasses. I've looked on the table. I've looked in the bathroom. I've looked in the pockets of my coat. I cannot find my glasses. I cannot find my glasses. What am I going to? Oh, there they are. I had them all. Or many of us have had the thing where you're leaving the house and you're looking for your keys. And you look through all your coats and through all your purses and things like that. And then you realize, oh, they're in your pocket where you left them. Anybody have that experience? Yeah. So you see, we do not lack the self. We don't become it because we already are it. But I have the non-apprehension of it. So what do? Abhyasa, vairagya. That's how Yoga Sutras say. Practice, meditate. Vairagya. Let go, renounce, let go. It quietens the mind. It reduces the frequency and the volume of thought. So the mind becomes sattvic. When the mind is purely sattvic, space between thoughts, with the attentive faculty turned inward, I begin to see Koham, who am I? I'm not the body, I'm not the feelings, I'm not the thoughts, I'm not any idea of self. Chidananda Rupaham, Shivoham, Shivoham. Oh, I'm of the form of bliss consciousness. I am Shiva, I'm auspiciousness. Aham Brahmasmi, I am not I know Brahman, I've become Brahman, I've reached Brahman, I've seen Brahman. No. I see that's what I've always been. Now, the essence of this shloka, this verse, that's only half the process. The other half is, what about this world? So when we go through Viveka Chudamani, we spend most of the time discriminating between the self and the not self, the subject and all the objects, the real and the unreal. And it's only about in the last quarter of the book, Shankara basically says, well, guess what? We lied. There is no not self. What we've been calling the not self is also the self. So the practice now is to see the self in and through all the people, places, things, and conditions. Scriptures give us two ways of viewing it. From this angle, I am the witness of this phenomena. It is pratibimba, like a reflection in a mirror. Mithya, illusion. Vaitatya, falseness. But if we look at it from this angle, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, as Chandogya thunders. Sarvam Idam, all this is verily Brahman. Well, how can it be an illusion and be Brahman at the same time? Make up your mind, Jim. Okay. If you go to your direct experience, it's very easy. So if you close your eyes, visualize a mango. Now, open your eyes. What was the material cause of the mango? What'd you make it out of? You didn't have to shove mango in your ear. You didn't use anything else other than the fabric of your mind, imagination. That's what it is. It's not separate from the fabric of your own mind, which fundamentally is just the awareness of thoughts. Now, if you dream about mangoes, there you are at home and you bought mangoes in the store and now you're cutting them up. Maybe you're going to make homemade mango lassi. And you wake up, oh, that was so vivid. Gosh, I could smell the mangoes in my dream. What's the difference between the mango of your imagination and the mango of your dream? There's a similarity, there's a difference. The similarity is both are nothing but imagination. The difference is the additional element of ignorance. When I'm dreaming, I do not know that the images of the dream are unreal. So the scriptures say all this comes about like a dream. How do we get upset about? All is Maya, all is bliss. It's all God. It's all okay. What appears as people, places, things, and conditions, horrible bosses, tragedies in Ukraine, it's all Krishna. And the material cause of it all is Brahman. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. How do we practice this? Turn the volume level down on our reactivity. Shankara uses the metaphor, it's like water being poured into a wicker basket. Let everything pass through. Don't get involved. The price tag for steady wisdom is to give up the world. This does not mean going up to the Himalayas and becoming a kutika. What's a kutika? Anybody know? A hermit. You live in a little hut. Kuti. You give up the world.
When you,
Pardon me?
what did you say? You give up the world, man.
When you quit investing in, when you quit believing, it's myriad lies. This will make you happy. This will make you miserable. This will make you really important. This will make you terrible. Well, it's nonsense. So when Lord Shiva opens his third eye, what's the mythology? What happens to the world?
It's destroyed.
Destroyed, burnt to ashes. This is like when a child says, "Oh, mommy, look at the rainbow. Let's get in the car and find the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow." What happens if you drive towards the rainbow?
Disappears.
Moves away or fades. Why? Seen, but not. So our investment in this world, attributing to it the power to make us happy around it, is like the child wanting to find the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Seen, pretty. This is our practice. This is mature vairagya. Now, how do we practice this? We have a term, I don't know if they talked about this when you did your Vipassana retreat. Did they talk about the fundamental impermanence of things?
Yes.
So that's the place we start. That's the beginning. Everything in this world, gross and subtle, is impermanent. Suffering comes from my grabbing it, attaching to it, trying to control it, trying to get rid of it. Nobody says, let it be. Quieter your mind gets, we see not only are all the names and forms impermanent, but they're insubstantial. What was the terminology used, Fang, that you said? It's like it wasn't real anymore. What you were saying as you were coming out of the retreat?
I said everything changes to sensory vibrations. All the pain changes to sensory vibrations.
But that's just your body. What about the world? Did you get any shift in your perception of the world?
I realized that this voice in my head is not who I am, but I don't know if that's.
Okay, that's a good start. But the voice in your head has nothing to do with what this world is either.
But everything it says rises and passes too. So yeah, so I stopped taking it as seriously.
So, twofold process. Koham, who am I? Second, what is this world and how has it come about? So we need both. So how do you know you've only done half the process? Yogis who are fond of meditation and avoid the world. Oh, leave me alone. I want to meditate. Oh, this world is so horrible. Oh, the people are so terrible. Oh, I can't stand to be in this world. It's so gross. That's a place where a lot of yogis get stuck. Am I making sense? If you think the world is horrible and gross, it means you're still thinking it's pretty real. The yogi needs to be free wherever she is. Be it in a hall with Brahmins chanting Vedas, or in the smashan, the cremation grounds among the corpses. It's all the same. Sarvamaya, Sarvama. All is Maya. All is bliss. Next one.
32. Anaditva na nirgun. Sorry, this sandhi is very complex. Anaditva nirgunatva atparamatmaya mavjaya sharirasthopi kaunteya nakaroti na lipyate.
Nirgunatva.
Yeah, nirgunatva. Atparamatma. Nirgunatvat paramatma.
Supreme self
Paramatmaya
is
mavjaya.
beyond the
Yeah.
luminance, is what he's saying.
Yeah.
All right. And the English?
Being without beginning and being devoid of qualities, the Supreme Self, the imperishable, though dwelling in the body, O Kaunteya, neither acts nor is tainted.
So, the self, and here the language says dwelling in the body. Actually, the self is not in the body. It just seems that way because I have a locus of perception. I peep out at the world from within this body. But think, you peep out at the dream world from within a dream body, don't you? So do you incarnate into the dream? Do you dwell in the dream body? Not really. You are not in the dream is in you. And as Krishna says back in, I think it's the 4th chapter, they're not even really in me. So who is it? Who am I? That still point that is always unattached. Names and forms swirl around. None of it touches. Don't believe me. Through your day, stop for a moment, introvert your attention, and notice the knower. See if you, oh gosh, when I meditated this morning at 4:30, I was a vast empty space. But right now, I'm a little gray ball with wings. You don't become the self. You notice, you realize what you've always been. Next one.
Yatha sarvagatam saukshmya adakasham nopalipyate sarvatravasthitau dehe tathatma nopalipyate. As the all-pervading ether is not tainted because of its subtlety, so too the self, seated everywhere in the body, is not tainted.
Yes. So the word here is akasha, which means space. Have you ever had the experience of you put something in the oven and you've forgotten about it and it burns and then fills the room with smoke? And the only time you realize it when the smoke alarm goes off. Anybody had that experience? Whole rooms filled with smoke. Pull out the thing, put it out. But then what do you have to do? Well, here what I do, open the windows, turn on the fan high. So there's smoke in the room. The smoke is contained in the room space. But the smoke has not tainted. It's the air that's tainted. Run the fan, open the windows, the smoke blows out. Space is just fine. So also disease and old age and aches and pains affect the body. Reactivity affects the mind with its feelings. Intellect has its doubts and certainties. Ego forms and lets go. But none of it touches yourself. Again, taking on this Sakshi Bhava, practicing, realizing, noticing, I'm always the witnessing consciousness. You find out whether you are touched or
Jim, question about that.
yes.
Related to what you were saying about the desire to control and shape the world. So if I notice, for example, this week I noticed that when I work from home, I'm not as happy as when I work from the office. So should I just change my situation by just going into the office? Or should I try to sort of let go of this desire to change my environment and just make peace with working from home?
What I would do in that situation back when I was doing sadhana in the ashram, I probably would have given myself the meditation, okay, I'm going to have to work from home for the rest of eternity. Can I let go and be at peace with this? Can I be okay? Then, once you find that neutral space, mind you, I didn't say you had to like it. I said you have to be accepting and neutral, be at peace. Then it doesn't matter whether you go to the office or not. You will always have preferences. This used to drive me nuts. because like we would be in the Bojasala, the dining hall at a camp. And, you know, Swamiji would be up at this big table, or sometimes we were closer to it and stuff like that. And he's, oh, good chutney, that's the chutney. The pickle, you used to call it the pickle. He has desires. He likes the pickle. I thought he wasn't supposed to have desires. Or the food was especially spicy, you know, and he was Malayali, so they liked it. They were cooking South Indian food. I could tell he was enjoying it. But, you know, if it was just sabji, dal, chapati and rice with almost no spicing, he'd be fine. But what you and I need to do, we get this way, way back in the earlier part of the Gita. We get this term yoga rudha. Anybody familiar with this term? So you see it in other literature, ashwarudha. Anybody heard that term? No, okay. It's a riding term. Arudha means to mount a horse. So it means yoga rudha means to mount the steed of the mind. What it means is we need to find that place in ourselves where we're willing for it to be however it is for the rest of eternity. And we're willing for it not to be somehow for the rest of eternity. A place of complete acceptance of what it
We could act on our preferences, right?
but only you can decide whether or not it's a preference or an insistence. If you're miserable at home, what are you going to do if COVID comes
Nothing.
back?
Get quite depressed, most likely.
But my point is, if you can't go to the office.
Yeah.
So the yogi wants to find a place where she's at peace, wherever she is. And see, it's the cosmic teeter-totter. Ego says, in order to be happy, I need to satisfy as many desires as possible. And result is always more desires. Yoga says, I will be happier when I can let go of these attachments and cravings. So I call it the cosmic teeter-totter. The more I'm attached, the more I seek control, the more I need to have it my way, the lower my serenity, lower my peace of mind. But the more I let go and let God, the more I go with the flow, the more I accept life on life's terms, the more I surrender to what is. Up grows my peace and my serenity. You choose. But for the person who lives their life from the viewpoint, the way to be happy is to play whack-a-mole with the world. I just say, how's that working out for you?
Not great.
Yeah. There's a marvelous scene in the movie Gandhi. Love that movie. Where that British say, arrest him. Go out to his little ashram, and they drag him off. And there he is. He would just infuriate the British. They could put him in a cell. They could put him in a room. There he is in his little diaper with his books, spinning cloth. They could not imprison him. It just drove him up a wall. Ordinary people, oh, I'm in jail. I'm not near my family. That's how you and I probably would react. And that Nandiji, he was content because he was practicing Vairagya. Is that making sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, they called him Mahatma Gandhi. Well, maybe not so Maha, you and I. Next verse.
34. यथा प्रकाशयत्येकः कृत्स्नं लोकमिमं रवि क्षेत्रं क्षेत्री तथा कृत्स्नं प्रकाशयति भारत. Just as this one sun illumines the whole world, so also the Lord of the field, Paramatma, illumines the whole field, O Bharata.
Yes. So, if you've studied a bit of Sankhya philosophy, they will posit that there's a bunch of these little individual Purushas. My soul, individual souls. Krishna here is saying that may be a workable hypothesis at one level, but it's not really true. And the best example that I've been able to come up with, I've got two of them. The first one, I have a great big piece of butcher paper. What have we got? 6 in here tonight? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. I have 6 pinholes in the paper. I turn off all the lights, and you see 6 little pinholes shining. The question is there a pen light behind each one of the 6 holes, 6 individual lights? Or is there one flashlight? And when it shines through the pinholes, it appears as 6 lights. So it seems like you have a self, you have a self, you have a self, etc. Krishna here is saying that's not really what's happening. The self in me is the self in you. Now here's the meditation that's useful. I, Jim, see the room from my viewpoint. Each of you see the room from your viewpoint. Different. I'm aware of my body. You are aware of your body. I'm aware of my thoughts and feelings. You are aware of your thoughts and feelings. But if I still the mind a bit, introvert the attentive faculty, and notice the self, there's just this vast, empty space of consciousness. There's nothing there. And it shines as prakasha, light of pure awareness. The self in me is not like the self in you. The self in me is the self in you. So we're back to our 6 little pinholes. So this pinhole is going to talk to this pinhole. Hello, little pinhole. I think my self is a flashlight. Is your self a flashlight too? Oh, that's really funny. When I looked inside and meditated, I think I'm a flashlight too. Gee, do you think we're 2 flashlights? No. One light shining through all the pinholes. It's very cool, because as you move through your day, a poet once said that the eyes are magic holes in eternity. They're kind of like a hole in the fabric of space-time itself. Because if you look into the eyes of another person, there's a living, conscious being there. And it's the same living, conscious being looking out of your eyes. All that's different is the equipment, the shape of the pinhole. It's all that's different. And that conscious being is Krishna, is Brahman. It's God the Father in Christian parlance. Whether you intellectually know it or not doesn't change the fact. So when you realize the self, you realize the self in everyone. So, funny story. Once upon a time, there was a princess. Her name was Damayanti. Have you read stories about Damayanti? What was her name? She's a Hindu mythology or literature. So Damayanti was very beautiful and very long black tresses, black hair. And there was a pool outside the palace. She would go down to this lake, this pool every morning. She would gaze at her reflection in the pool because she was very beautiful. One day there was a breeze, and in the morning she goes down to the pool. She looks in the water. Water's all rippling. She has this strange idea. Oh my gosh, I don't have a head. She's quite upset. She runs back to the palace and she shouts, "Help me, I don't have a head. I don't have a head." Well, the various ministers thought she was a bit strange. So they say to the princess, "Damayanti, my dear, your head is on top of your shoulders where it's always been." "No, no, no. I looked in the pond and I don't have a head. I don't have a head." So they were quite perplexed. So they decided to tie her to a pillar. So she's struggling away. It's the Vipassana pillar. Finally, she settles down. One of the ministers says, "Damayanti, your head is on top of your shoulders where it's always been." "No, I couldn't see my head." Now there was one minister who was very clever. And he picks up a stick and he goes, whack. And Damayanti goes, "Ouch!" And the minister says, "That's your head, stupid." Damayanti was amazed. She realized, oh, I have a head. Marvelous am I, wisest of women. I know I have a head. So they untie her, and she runs around the palace with great joy. I have a head. I have a head. And then she settles down a bit, and she looks around. She sees the king walk by, and he has a head. And several of the princes go by the other direction. They all have heads. The ministers go by. They all have heads. Even the servants go by. Every single one of them had a head. So finally, she returns to sanity. So, of course, the story of Damayanti is the story of you. Somewhere in life, I get the idea I'm in bondage. I do not know myself. I am not realized. I need to become realized. So we go find the Guru. Oh, Guruji, I'm being roasted in the fires of change. I'm being tossed up and down. Save me by a nectarine glance of your eyes. Scriptures use language like that. It's a little sweet. So what do we learn to do? Shravana, we hear from the scriptures. That's the ministers telling Damayanti, your head's on top of your shoulders. Yourself is yourself. Who sees the phone? I do. That's yourself. Yes, but I don't know it. I don't know it. I don't know it. So then we get tied to a pillar, which means we meditate. Why? We immobilize the senses. We stop the compulsive reactivity based on our vasanas. This quietens everything down. And again, we hear the truth of the scriptures. You are not the body, you are not the mind, you are not the ego. You are the knower. Yeah, but, you know that voice in your head? And hopefully a skillful teacher will be able to create those wonderful grace-filled moments. And they direct us back on ourselves. Who hears the traffic outside? And the subtle intellect goes, oh, I get it. There's nobody there. Then the ego comes in. Oh, I know myself. I'm kind of special. I'm going to start posting on Facebook. Maybe I can be on YouTube now. I'll start writing. That's just more nonsense. And finally, we realize the self that I realize, everybody already knows. Everybody knows. And then we return to a bit of sanity. All right, one more, and that's the end of the chapter.
Kshetra kshetrajnayoreva mantaram jnana chakshusha bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye viduryanti te param. They who, with their eye of wisdom, come to know the distinction between the field and the knower of the field, and of the liberation from the prakriti of the being, go to the Supreme.
So what is it that we need to know? The distinction between the field, kshetra, and the knower of the field, kshetranya. The difference between all of the phenomena and the noumena. And how all of this, nama, rupa, name and form, it's just the movement of the chaitanya, mind itself. The play, consciousness. None of it touches me, the ground of being. And the person who knows this is the person with a liberated personality. Have freedom. Very, very important chapter. Okay, there's a little Upanishad at the end and then we'll finish.
Om Tat Saditi Srimad Bhagwad Gita Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjun Samvade Kshetra Kshetragya Vibhaga Yogo Nama Trayodashodhyayaha. Thus in the Upanishad of the glorious Bhagwad Gita, in the science of the eternal, in the scripture of yoga, in the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna, the 13th discourse ends entitled The Field and the Knower of the Field.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Really good discussion on this chapter. I think this is the